Hello my loves, Tony here from TL Yarn Crafts and welcome to another fun and free crochet tutorial. I am positively bouncing in my seat to share the Savannah Cardi with you. This cropped cutie is the Tunisian crochet sweater your fall wardrobe has been craving, and it's totally customizable. Make it longer, make it striped, make it in a lighter weight yarn. Whatever you do, honey, make it yours. And in this tutorial, I'll teach you how to do the Tunisian crochet foundation row, the gorgeous arrowhead stitch, and we'll bring it all together for your first, but definitely not your last, crochet cardigan. And if you're brand new to Tunisian crochet, that is totally all right, because this project is 100% beginner friendly. To follow along, grab the free pattern from my blog or the printable PDF version from my shop. Links to both of those resources are down in the description. This project is part of Crochet Academy, which is my free Learn to Crochet program that has graduated over 40,000 makers. We're celebrating 5 amazing years of the program, and you can find all of the past lessons as well as some limited edition merch over in my shop. Links to those also down in the description. Before we dive in, pretty please do me a little favor, hit that like button and then mosey on over to the subscribe. I am dangerously close to 1 million subs and I can't get there without you. Reaching that milestone means I'll be able to share the joy of crochet with even more people, and I would love for you to be part of that journey. Please join the TLYC family and let's keep stitching together. Now with all that business out of the way, let's talk materials. Hey there, lovely. It is time to talk materials, and we're going to start off, of course, with this gorgeous yarn. Listen, I have been waiting to make a cardigan with Lion Brand's Landscapes Breeze since the moment it came out, and I'm so glad I can now make one with you. So Landscapes Breeze is a category 4 worsted weight yarn. It's what's called a blown yarn. So the outside is going to be a casing, and then there's fiber blown into it. So it's got this light lofty feel to it, but it's still got some nice warmth and breathability, especially in this gorgeous stitch pattern. Can you just for a second, look how beautiful that is. I can't get over it, okay? You can substitute any worsted weight yarn that you want. Just make sure you check your gauge, okay? Now, with our Landscapes Breeze, we're gonna need a different amount depending on your size, and we're gonna talk about sizing in just a minute so you can figure out exactly how much yarn you need for your project. Love me some Landscapes Breeze. Okay, in addition to the yarn, we're also going to need a few tools and other supplies. So we've got an 8mm Tunisian crochet hook here. This one is one of my favorites. It is a metal Tunisian crochet hook, which is a little tricky to find, but this set runs pretty cheap on Amazon, so you can go pick that up. Link for this and all the other materials, of course, are down in the description. And I've got a nice long cord on here. We're gonna need a cord that's at least 24 inches, but I tend to go for a much longer cord. Reason being is that instead of putting a stopper on the end, I will take that long cord and put the end under my thigh, or I'll tuck it between the cushions of my couch. Then that way it's just not flopping around all the time, because not every panel of my cardigan is super wide. So I don't want to keep having to go back and forth between cords. So I just put one long cord on there and let that thing just sit wherever I put it, okay? 8mm Tunisian crochet hook. We're also going to need a regular 6mm hook. Now we're going to be using this for the ribbing on our cardigan. We're gonna make the ribbing a little bit tighter just so it doesn't kind of flay out. I heard somebody call it mermaiding, where like the tail kind of flares out from the rest of the piece here. So we're gonna go with a smaller hook since we're transitioning from Tunisian crochet to traditional crochet here. Now then, we are also going to need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a tape measure, and also some locking stitch markers, which will really come in handy when it's time to do that sleeve. All right, lovelies, we've got all of our materials, but before we start stitching, I want to talk to you about how to pick the perfect size. So make sure you've got a PDF copy of the pattern, and let's talk about sizing. So here I have a PDF version of the pattern. Love it so much, print in black and white, girl, because who has time for a color printer? Okay, so if we flip over to page 2 in the pattern, we have all of our pattern details. So this is gonna list all the supplies that you need, your hooks, your notions, your yarn, and then over here you're going to see dimensions. And I want to bring your attention to size, because as you'll see, this pattern is sized from an extra small all the way up to a 5XL. Now that sizing is specifically for the bust or whatever is the largest dimension of your torso, right? So it says all sizes are intended to have 8 to 10 inches of positive ease. That means that whatever your bust, your chest, or your tummy size, if that is the largest dimension of your torso, this sweater should end up being 8 to 10 inches bigger than that dimension of your body. So it is supposed to be oversized. It's supposed to be nice and loose and really comfortable. Now you might be wondering, Tony, I need a little bit more guidance than that. And thankfully, I assumed you would. So we're going to flip over to page 10 of the pattern and dive a bit deeper into these dimensions. So here on page 10, you're going to find a cardigan sizing chart. So this chart is going to list several different dimensions of this sweater and also of your body to make sure you pick the size that works best for you. So up here on this first row, we're going to see the finished bust. So this is the finished chest measurement, tummy measurement, whatever is the largest size of your torso. And I say the largest size of your torso because some people might have a smaller chest and a little bit more tummy, or they might have more chest and no tummy, whatever it happens to be. Just measure the largest dimension. I would recommend measure your chest and also measure your tummy. Have somebody else do it for you if you need to, and then you can select your size from there. Now it says also in the second row to fit bust. So this is your actual measurement. So let's say that your chest measures 34 inches. That would put you in a size small. And this says that your finished cardigan is going to have a bust measurement of 42 inches. So you might be a 34, but the finished bust is a 42. So that is plus 8 in ease. So that is going to be oversized by 8 inches. So just go through the pattern and highlight the size of whatever you are. Now throughout this tutorial, I'm going to be working on the extra small size just because, you know, just to make it go a little bit quicker. But again, just select whatever size you are, and then you're going to make that individual size. Now think about it like this too. Maybe that 8 inches of ease is a little bit too much for you. Say you're a 42 around your chest, but you prefer a kind of closer fit. You might not want to go all the way down to a 42 on the finished bust. That's really fitted, but maybe you want to go to a 46. You can absolutely do that. This is your cardigan. You make the rules. You do whatever you want to. So even if this pattern says you're a 42 and you should make the size large, if you want to make the size medium, you absolutely can. A couple other things on customizing your cardigan. Once you've chosen your bust size, I also recommend measuring your upper arm circumference as well as the length of your sleeves that you want, because we all know that we're not all one size fits all. So you might be a smaller size, but might have longer arms because you're quite tall, or vice versa. Maybe you are a larger size, but you're a little on the petite size, so you need a shorter sleeve length. You absolutely could pull, let's say, the 2X size, but instead of doing a arm circumference of 20, maybe yours is a little bit smaller, so you might go down to 17, right? So you're going to do the 2X for the body panels, so for the fronts and backs, but maybe you're going to do the large size for your sleeves. This pattern does accommodate intermixing the sleeve and the bust sizes. So if you need to do a smaller size and a bigger arm, or vice versa, you can. And in the same respect, if you need to do a longer sleeve or a shorter sleeve, or maybe you're somewhere in the middle, you could do that as well. So feel free to customize the dimensions of your cardigan to make sure it's actually going to fit you. And you can always measure your different panels as you go to make sure they're the right length. Once you've decided what sizes you're going to use, I do recommend going through the pattern and highlighting your size. And this is what I mean. So if we go to the directions here, and let's say we're working on the back, you'll see here on the foundation row that we're going to chain a certain amount, and each of these numbers corresponds with a different size. So here on page 10, we chose to do a 2XL for the body. So then we're going to go here and choose a 2XL size. If we look at our pattern here, the 2XL is the first number after the second set of parentheses. So the extra small size is the first number here. Small through XL are in the first set of parentheses. 2X through 5X are in the second set of parentheses. And the 2X is this first number. So now here in this pattern, I'm going to highlight the number that corresponds with the 2X size. And I recommend going through your pattern and doing that for each set of numbers that you see, just like that. Then for the sleeves, we decided we want to do the size large. So I would then go to the sleeve section here, find the size large, and I know I'm going to follow that set of instructions. So that's kind of how you read this pattern, how you customize your size, how you make sure it's going to fit you exactly how you like your clothing to fit. Next, let's talk about our notes section, which is pretty abundant on this pattern. I want to make sure we are all following along and have everything that we need to be successful. First, there's the tutorial video. Of course, if you are listening to this, you are already watching the tutorial video, but keep in mind that it is also linked here in the PDF pattern if you choose to get it, or you can access it through the blog post. As far as the construction note, this kind of breaks down how our cardigan is made. So it says our cardigan is made first by making the back panel, then 2 front panels. Sleeves are then made beginning at the cuff. So we've got ribbing down here at the bottom, and we're going to work in this direction. Then the pieces are seamed together and ribbing is added to the bottom and the front edges. And that's how we'll make and finish our cardigan. Let's talk a little bit about gauge. So I think it's because of the flexibility of the yarn, the construction of the yarn, but the gauge fluctuates a little bit that I found. We're looking to achieve an 8 to 10 inches of positive ease. So consider wet blocking your gauge swatch before you start to get more accurate gauge. I do recommend wet blocking your cardigan, and there's going to be a section where you're instructed to stop and wet block your piece. I strongly recommend that because this yarn in particular does have some animal fiber in it, and animal fiber is very, very susceptible to wet blocking. It just gives it some really beautiful drape, adds some lightness, and really just cleans the fibers, makes everything lay the way that it's supposed to. If you're working with something that does not have any animal fibers in it, you might just want to steam block your pieces, but that's totally up to you. You could wet block them still if you want to. But if you are planning to wet block any of your pieces, I would encourage you to wet block your gauge swatch, which you should absolutely make. Don't skip that part. All right. And then there is a link in here to practice this stitch. If you've never tried it before, it's called the arrowhead stitch. That's this beautiful texture that's created from Tunisian Crochet here. And if you want to practice that stitch, there is a link. Otherwise, we are going to do that here in this tutorial. And then we also want to talk a little bit about right side, wrong side. So Tunisian crochet fabric has a very distinct right side and wrong side. You can see that they look very different. I put that note in there because I'm not naming any names, but when I first went to seam these pieces together, they were not correct. So I just put that in there because if I can make that mistake, you can make that mistake. So just make sure that when you are seaming your pieces together, ensure all the panels are seamed with the right side facing. So that is this side here. So when we go to seam the back to the front panels, I put my right sides together. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of our notes, we know what size we're making, we have all of our materials, it is finally time to start stitching. So let's begin with learning the arrowhead stitch. The main stitch pattern we'll be using throughout our project is called the arrowhead stitch. It creates this really beautiful textured fabric. It also has some openness and airiness. And as you can see in this yarn, it's got some really delightful drape. So we'll be working just flat panels just like this with absolutely no shaping for the back and the 2 front panels. So I'm going to teach you how to do this stitch pattern, and then you can go to the pattern, and based on the number of chains to start your size, you'll be able to use this same stitch tutorial to make your back and front panels. So I'm going to take you through your foundation row, your stitches, as well as the bind off. So let's get to it. To start things off, we'll want to make a slip knot in our yarn and put that on our 8mm Tunisian crochet hook. Now our arrowhead stitch is going to be worked with a chain that is a multiple of 2. And again, the pattern will tell you exactly how many chains to make based on you achieving my same gauge. Okay, so I'm going to yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Make sure you keep your chains relatively loose. There's going to be ribbing and seaming going on. So if your chain gets a little bit wonky, it's truly okay. Just make those chains nice and loose. As you can see, mine are open, flexible. That's exactly what we're going for. Just like that. Let's see how many chains I have. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I'll go to 14. Alrighty. So that is what my starting chain looks like. And now we have to build the foundation row, which is kind of that setup row to begin our stitching. So we're going to find the second chain from the hook. 1, 2. So this loop on our hook does not count as a chain. First chain is here. Second chain is here. Now that we found that second chain, we're actually going to rotate the chain towards us to expose this back channel of bumps. Okay, so I still have my second chain from my hook, which is right here. I'm going to insert my hook just under the back bump of that chain, just like that. Yarn over the hook and pull through just that one loop. Now with Tunisian crochet, we're going to collect loops on our hook. So we're not going to yarn over and pull through these loops. Nope, we'll leave them right here. Now we'll find the next chain, which is right here. We've got that little back bump right there. We're going to use the tip of our hook. Mine is nice and sharp, which makes this process so easy. Yarn over and pull up the loop. And we're going to do that for each chain across the way. So I started with 14 chains. I should have 14 loops on my hook when I'm done. For you, however many you started for your size, you should have that many loops on your hook once you've pulled up a loop in each chain down the line. So we're grabbing those back bumps because that's going to leave this nice braid of stitches here at the bottom, which is going to make it very, very easy to add our ribbing later. So insert, yarn over, pull up the loop. Insert, yarn over, pull up the loop. All the way down. Alrighty, so I've worked all the way down my chain. I'm gonna give this a quick count just to make sure I have all the loops I need. So I started with 14 chains. I should have 14 loops on my hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Well done. Okay, so we've just done what's called the forward pass of our foundation row, which means that we've collected the loops. Each row of Tunisian crochet has 2 passes. Forward pass is complete. Now let's do that second pass, which is called the return pass, and we'll actually work these loops off of our hook. And here's how that goes. First things first, we'll yarn over, pull through 1 loop to begin the return pass. Then yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. And this is the same return pass regardless of what row we're on. It starts with a yarn over, pull through 1 first, then yarn over, pull through 2 until we have just 1 loop left on the hook. Just like that. So this is what your foundation row should look like after we complete it. So we've got that nice set of V's on the bottom. We have all these vertical bars here in the middle, and then we have a row of horizontal bars, which is what we created during our return pass. Now let's move into row 1. Moving into row 1, it says to Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, or TSS 2 tog. Here's what that means. This first loop on our hook always counts as our first stitch, so we're actually going to skip this very first vertical bar. So here's the loop on our hook. Right at the base of that loop, there's a vertical bar on the far end of our work. We're going to skip that loop, and that is implied in the pattern. So we're going to skip that and find the next 2 vertical bars, which are right here. So each stitch in Tunisian crochet actually has a front and a back vertical bar. There's the front, there's the back. We're only focusing on the front bars here. So we're going to actually grab the front bars of the next 2 stitches. So skipping this first vertical bar, we're going to grab this front bar and the next front bar, just like that. At this point, we can yarn over and we're going to pull through both of those loops, just like that. Okay, so that was our TSS 2 tog, so 2 simple stitches together, and we follow that with a yarn over. Okay, so it's a decrease followed by an increase, so they even out and we still have the correct number of stitches. And we're going to repeat that all the way across until we get to our very last stitch. So again, find your next 2 stitches. Grab those 2 vertical bars with your hook at the same time, just like that. Yarn over and pull through that loop. Make sure you're pulling up nice tall loops. We want to have those big open spaces. And after that 2 together, we follow that with a yarn over. Here we go. 2 together, yarn over. Work 2 together, yarn over, 2 together, yarn over. I have another 2 together here. I'm getting towards the end of my row, and what often happens is people will work this 2 together and forget the yarn over. Do the yarn over, okay? Don't forget that. Now we're at the edge of our work and we actually do have one stitch left, but as you can see, this looks real wonky. It's hard to see. So I'm going to grab my tapestry needle and show you exactly where to insert your hook for that last stitch. Make sure you don't lose the yarn over. Now what I like to do is use my pinchers here and kind of lift my work, lift all that fabric away. It'll create a little bit of a space here between the last stitch worked and the very last stitch of the row. Now, if we take a look, we've got a nice tall loop here on the edge of our work, and you might be tempted to just go through that loop, which wouldn't be completely wrong, but it's just not the entire stitch. We want to make sure we have nice clean edges on the side of our work like I do on this sample. And the way that we do that is we're going to grab not only that front stitch, but also something that I like to call the shadow. I call it that because it's a loop that's sitting just behind and is about half as high as this tall loop here. So if I rotate my work towards me, I can see that my shadow is sitting right there. You see that? So here's my tall loop, shadow just behind and half as high. I can grab my tapestry needle and go through those two loops. So this is where we need to place our hook to complete our last stitch. So remember I did the yarn over after my last work two together. And now I'm going to grab my bar and my shadow at the same time, yarn over and pull through both of those loops to complete the row. And at this point, I should still have 14 loops on my hook. You should still have the same number of chains that you started with. So your forward pass will always end with the same number of loops as the number of chains that you started the swatch with. Okay, and then from here, we're going to jump into that return pass, yarn over, pull through one loop to start. Then it's yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two, until there is just one loop left on the hook. Beautiful. And that completes row one. Now let's move on to row two. This stitch pattern is a 2-row repeat. So this first row kind of created these open stitches, and our second row is essentially going to close this all up again. So here's how that works. So we're going to start off with a Tunisian simple stitch 1. Now you might be like, Tony, where does that go? Don't worry, I'm gonna show you. So we've got this loop on our hook, right? And remember that that counts as our first stitch. So we're always skipping this very first vertical bar. So we're going to find the next vertical bar, which is right here. Here's the first one, which we skip. Next vertical bar is right here. We're going to insert just under that front vertical bar, yarn over and pull up the loop. So there's our simple stitch 1. Now it says to knit the yarn over, Tunisian knit stitch the yarn over. And you're like, what does that mean? So the yarn over is this big open space right here. But what you'll notice about the yarn over is it still has a front bar and a back bar, just like all of our other stitches. So I say to knit the yarn over because a knit stitch involves going between the front and back bars. And in this stitch, by going down into this space, we are going between the front and back bars. So we're going to just dip down into that nice big space, yarn over and pull up a nice tall loop. Make sure that loop meets the height of your other stitches. So that was the loop that was on our hook already. Simple 1, knit the yarn over. So we're going to repeat that across, simple the next stitch, which is right here, and knit the yarn over. Simple the next stitch, knit the yarn over. Simple 1, knit the space. Simple 1, knit the space. Here towards the end, we're going to simple 1, and don't forget there was a yarn over before that last stitch. It's right here. Knit the space. And now we need to find the 2 bars of our edge stitch. Let's do that again together. So we have a nice tall loop right here, and then rotating that work towards us, we've got our shadow sitting right there. So we want to make sure we grab both of these. Just using the tip of my hook, I like to get under both of those loops at the same time. Just makes it a whole lot easier instead of trying to grab one at a time. Then yarn over and pull through that edge stitch. And again, I'm maintaining my stitch count. Now I can do my return pass. Yarn over, pull through 1, then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over through 2, and 2, and 2 again, until we have 1 loop left on our hook. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so this is what your work should look like after row 2. So we've got this open row down here that had the yarn overs, And then we have this closed row now because we essentially closed up all those yarn over spaces. So that's what gives us this nice open texture and then closed texture, open texture, closed texture, just by repeating those two. So let's do another round of that 2-row repeat just to make sure you got it, okay? So now we're going back to row 1. First loop on our hook counts as our first stitch. We're skipping this very first vertical bar. If I open up my work a bit, I can see stitch 2 and 3 are right here. So I'm going to grab the front vertical bar of stitch 2 and stitch 3 and work those together. So there's stitch 2 and stitch 3, yarn over, pull up a nice tall loop, followed by a yarn over. 2 together, yarn over. 2 together, yarn over. 2 together, yarn over. And we're going to repeat that across until we get to our last stitch. Making sure to always follow your 2 together with a yarn over. Don't forget that, it's very important. All right, now we can work our edge stitch. So I've got my front bar here, shadow is just behind it, pushing my hook through both of those. Yarn over, pull up a nice tall loop. Yarn over, pull through 1 loop, then yarn over, pull through 2, and 2, and 2 again, until there's just 1 loop left on the hook. Beautiful. We can see that gorgeous stitch pattern emerging already. So happy with this. Alrighty, so that was the first row of our 2-row repeat. Now let's move on to the second row. First loop on our hook counts as our first stitch. We're skipping this very first vertical bar. We need to simple the next stitch right here. So insert your hook just under the front vertical bar of that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now we need to knit the yarn over. So the yarn over space is right here. Insert into that space, pushing my hook to the back of the work, yarn over, pull up a nice tall loop. Keep that tension loose so you can pull up a nice tall loop. And repeat that across. Simple one, knit the space. Simple one, knit the space. Simple one, knit the space. And we're going to repeat that all the way across. Simple one, and don't forget, before we get to our edge stitch, we need to knit the space. Beautiful. And now we can grab the 2 bars of our last stitch, just like that. Yarn over, pull up a nice tall loop, then yarn over, pull through 1 to start the return pass, yarn over, pull through 2, and 2, and 2 again, until we have just 1 loop left on our hook. Beautiful. Look at that. So based on our pattern here, you'll want to do this same thing, starting with the number of chains for your size, working to the number of rows to your size, and then we'll get to the bind off. And this set of instructions is essentially the same for the back and the 2 fronts that you have to make. The only difference is the number of chains that you start with. So you'll see here for the back, that extra small size starts with 60 chains, and for the front, it starts with just 28. But otherwise, completing the foundation, rows 1 and 2, the repeats and the bind off are exactly the same. So I'm going to add a little bit more length onto my swatch here. Join me back here when you've completed all of the rows for your size, for the, let's say for the back, and then we'll do the bind off together. Welcome back, my sweet. So I added a bit more length onto my swatch here. It's just working up so pretty. I love this stitch so much. Okay, so I just finished with a row 1 repeat. Now in the pattern, it says to repeat rows 1 and 2 until you have a certain number of rows. All of them are going to be an even number of rows, including your foundation row. So let's talk about how we count these rows, right? So our foundation row is this kind of closed row down here at the bottom. So we have 1, then this open space would be 2, closed space is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if you're finishing with an even number of rows, you should finish with your 2 together yarn over row. Okay, so just make sure you're finishing on that, just to make sure that the bind off lines up. So from here, we need to do the bind off, and we're going to bind off in pattern, which means that we're essentially going to do the same thing that we would do in a row 2 repeat, but we're also going to add the bind off element to that. So here's how that works. So we have a stitch here. We're going to simple this stitch. So yarn over, pull up a loop, and then the bind off portion of this is just pulling through this remaining loop on the hook. So just completing it like a slip stitch, but make sure you keep it relatively loose so we don't get any puckering here at the top of the work. Now we have this space, so we're going to go down like we're going to knit the space, pull up the loop, and pull through the remaining loop on our hook. Simple the next stitch, but yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. Knit the space, yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. Simple one and pull through for a slip stitch. Knit one and pull through for a slip stitch. Again, making sure that you keep these loops relatively loose. We don't want anything tightening up on us here. Just like that. And pull through. There's the simple one and pull through. And don't forget about this space right here. Insert, yarn over, pull up that loop, pull through the stitch. Now we're at our last stitch. We're going to insert in that last stitch just like we've been doing before, grabbing that front bar as well as the shadow, yarn over, pull through the stitch and through the loop that's on our hook to complete the bind off. And there you go. So we've got our bind off in pattern. We've got this nice set of V's here at the top, which is going to make a clean edge for us to do our join to our back pan or to our front panels or back panels, whichever, it don't matter. Anyways, bind off is done. What do we need to do next? We need to fasten off. Now, if you're working on your back panel, you can just fasten off with enough length here to weave in this end. If you're working on your front panels, it does say to leave a tail that is twice the width of this panel. So I just like to basically go like that, right? So we've got once the width, twice the width. I put a little bit extra on there because we're going to use the tails from the front panels to seam to the back panel. So at that point, you would then fasten off, pull this loop up and out of the work, and that panel would be complete. So this would be one of my front panels. I would need to then do this exact same thing to make my second front panel and then make a nice wide one for my back panel. So now that you understand your arrowhead stitch, go ahead and make your back and 2 front panels. And when I see you again, we're going to move on to the sleeves. All right, y'all, it's time to make some sleeves. And let's talk a little bit about how these sleeves come together. So we're going to start down here at the cuffs, and we're actually going to make ribbing in this direction, working single crochets in the back loop. Then we're going to rotate things, pick up stitches along the side of that ribbing and work in this direction. So from the bottom up. And what you see here is we do have some shaping in this sleeve. So I have just a few increases here, but I'm going to show you how to do those increases. And this is where your locking stitch markers will come in handy. So I'm going to make sure those are not too far away. All right, let's tighten down and it's time to get started. Now it is time to make our sleeve. I have switched to my 6mm hook. We're going to do this ribbing with the smaller hook to make that ribbing just a little bit tighter. Now all of the ribbing is made the same at the beginning for all of the sizes. The biggest difference is how many rows of ribbing you're going to do. Now I am just doing a tiny sample here, so some of my information is going to be a little bit different, but make sure you follow the numbers and the numbers of rows for the size that you're making, okay? So in the pattern, it says to start with a chain 7 for the ribbing. Since I'm just doing a smaller version, I'm going to start with a chain 5. So we're going to make that slip knot, place it on our hook, yarn over, pull for 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's 5, and you would keep going to 7, okay? All right, so I have 5 chains, you'll have 7 chains, but follow the pattern, okay? I'm doing just a small sample, you follow the pattern for the number of stitches that you need. So with that chain, we're gonna start in the second chain from the hook and single crochet in each chain across. So here's the first chain from the hook right here under my thumb, and here's the second chain from the hook. So we're just gonna grab just that top loop of the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through both loops to complete a single crochet. Insert into the next stitch, complete a single crochet, and we'll do that for each chain down the line. Now again, I'm working a small sample, so I'm going to have 4 single crochets in my rows. You will have 6, okay? Chain 1, and turn. And this is the point where it becomes ribbing. So you can see that we've got a little V here at the top of our stitch. Instead of grabbing both of the loops of that V, we're going to grab just the back loop. So grab the back loop of that stitch, yarn over, pull up the loop, and complete that single crochet. And we're going to do that across, grabbing just the back loop of the next stitch. Back loop, just the back loop. Then we can chain one and turn our work. And we're going to repeat that for the number of rows that it says in the pattern for your size. So again, chain one, single crochet in the back loop across the row. Complete that and join me back here. I'll show you how we'll pull up stitches for the body of our sleeve. Let's keep this train moving. I've got the ribbing that I need for the size that I'm making. You should have a much longer ribbing than this. But we have now switched from our 6mm hook and inserted our 8mm Tunisian hook into that live loop at the end of that last row. So now we need to pull up a loop for each row end here. So I have 14 rows, so I essentially will need 14 loops on my hook by the time I'm done pulling up my loops. So I already have one loop on my hook. It's going to count for this first row. Now I need to pull up a loop in this next row. So it's a little tricky going directly in the end of the row here. There's kind of like a lot of knots and loops. So I like to just kind of go down into the base of this stitch here, insert, yarn over, and pull up a nice tall loop. Now I need to go in the end of this next row, and then in the end of the following row, the row after that, and so on. Pulling up a loop in the end of each row, so you should have the same number of loops on your hook as the number of rows of ribbing that you made. In my case, it'll be 14. I've got one more to go here. We're going to drop it right in this space. So now I'm going to give it a count just to make sure I got everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Wonderful. Okay, and from here, I can do my return pass. Yarn over, pull through 1 to start, then yarn over, pull through 2, and 2, and 2, and 2 again until I have just one loop left on my hook. Almost there. There we go. Alrighty, so that was my foundation row. So now I can go into row 1, and this just gets us right back into our arrowhead stitch pattern. So remember, that's work 2 together, followed by a yarn over, 2 together, yarn over, 2 together, yarn over. This should be second nature at this point. You've done this plenty. You've made your 2 back panels and your front panel, your 2 front panels and your back panel. So you should have the arrowhead stitch down by now. Don't forget that yarn over, and then work our edge stitch, making sure we grab 2 loops. Yarn over, pull up the nice tall loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, and 2, and 2, and 2, and 2, and 2. So this is row 1 of your sleeves. And row 2 is followed by that closed row. So this was the open row. Now let's do the closed row. First loop on our hook counts as our first stitch. Skipping that first vertical bar, we're going to grab that next bar, yarn over, pull up a nice tall loop, and then pull up a loop in the space. A loop in the stitch, and a loop in the space. A loop in the stitch, a loop in the space. All the way across. Just like that. Make sure you pull up a loop in that space before the edge stitch, and then work that edge stitch grabbing both loops, so that tall bar and the shadow. Yarn over, pull through the loop, yarn over, pull through 1, and then 2, 2, and 2. Just like that. There we go. So for the size that I'm making, rows 3 and 4 are the same as 1 and 2. So I'm just jumping back into my arrowhead stitch pattern and completing 2 more rows. There we go. So I've got my foundation here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now rows 5 and 6 are my increase rows. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It might show up in slightly different places on the size that you're making, but these increase rows are worked the same for each of the sizes. So the very first step is Tunisian full 1 in the first space. So we're looking for the space between stitch 1 and 2. So remember that each stitch has a front and back bar. So here are the front and back bars for stitch 1, front and back bars for stitch 2. If I pull those together, the space between those is where I need to insert my hook. So I'm just going to go down into that space, pushing my hook to the back of the work, yarn over and pull up a nice tall loop. So that is my increase. And then from here, I'm going to work in my arrowhead stitch pattern. So I'm going to work 2 together, yarn over, 2 together, yarn over. And I'm going to do that until I get to my last stitch. So working 2 together, yarn over, 2 together, yarn over, 2 together, followed by a yarn over. And then when you reach that last stitch, we need to work a Tunisian full stitch in the space before this last stitch. So remember before when I pulled my work apart and I ended up with that little space, that is the space before the last stitch. So making sure not to lose my yarn over, I'm going to dip down into that space, pushing my hook to the back, yarn over and pull up a nice tall loop. And now I can work my edge stitch, grabbing those 2 bars, yarn over, pull up a loop. So I have now increased my stitch count by 2 when I put a full stitch here at the end and 1 at the beginning. So let me do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I increased by 2 stitches. Now I can just do my normal return pass. Yarn over, pull through 1 to start, then yarn over, pull through 2, 2, 2, and 2. Just like that till I have 1 loop left on my hook. So just like our arrowhead stitch is worked in a 2-row repeat, our increases are worked in 2 rows. So that was the first of the 2 rows. Now let's move to the next of the 2 rows. So we're going to start with a Tunisian full stitch in the first space. Might be a little tricky to find, so let's do it together. I'm going to first, it helps to have some nails. I'm going to first find the front and back bar of that first stitch, and then the front and back bar of the next stitch. So this is the space I need to go down into. I like to just hold on to that second stitch, keep it out of the way, and then using my nice pointy hook, I'm going to go into that space, yarn over and pull up a nice tall loop. I'm going to follow that with a simple 1. So just grabbing the front bar of that next stitch. And now I'm going to jump back into my arrowhead stitch pattern. So it's simple 1, knit the yarn over. Simple 1, knit the yarn over. And I'm going to do that until I get to my last 2 stitches. Simple 1, knit the yarn over. Simple 1, knit the yarn over. Simple 1, knit the yarn over. Simple 1, then knit the yarn over. Now I have 2 stitches left. I have 1 right here. You can see that. So that's the front bar of it. That's the back bar of it. 1 stitch here, and then my edge stitch still. So to finish up this row, I need to simple 1. I need to full stitch before my edge stitch. So again, pulling my edge stitch away from that last stitch, and I end up with a little hole right here. I'm going to go down into that hole for my full stitch, and then grab the 2 bars. There we go, for my edge stitch, just like that. Okay, so now I've increased by 2 again. So at the end of my last row, I had 16. Now I should have 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. You see that? So that is how we increase an arrowhead stitch, by putting full stitches on the end in pairs of rows so that we're increasing by 2 stitches on that first row, 2 stitches on the next row. So then the following rows will line up. So a yarn over and pull through 1 to start, then yarn over, pull through 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 again. So after our increased rows, we go back into even rows, which basically means that we will not increase or decrease in the row after this. So the next row, we just jump right back into our arrowhead stitch pattern. So we're going to do this next row together just to make sure we're both on the same page. So again, this first loop on our hook counts as our first stitch. We're skipping this first vertical bar. We're going to find the next 2 stitches, which are right here. Insert under the front bar of both of those, yarn over, pull up a loop, followed by a yarn over. Work 2 together, yarn over. Work 2 together, yarn over. Just like that. So you see it all lines right back up. Don't ask me how long it took to figure out how to increase an arrowhead stitch. Just be grateful that I put the work in. Because it was not easy figuring that out. And then yarn over. Don't forget that yarn over, okay? Then we work our edge stitch. Just like that. And the return pass. Beautiful. Awesome. So if I pull my loop up and out, you can see now that I've got a clear set of increases happening here. And what I recommend is at this point, to make counting a little bit easier, put a locking stitch marker on the first row of your increase, just so you know how many increases you've done and where they started. Because for each size, you're going to need to do a 4-row repeat of 4 rows at least, 2 increase rows and 2 even rows throughout your sleeve. So you'll continue to increase, adding stitches on each edge till it gets to the width that you need it to be. So if we take a look at my little sample here, I have just a couple of increases. I have one down here and one here at the top before I get to my bind off. So I want you to continue your sleeve and join me when you're ready to bind off. We'll do that together and I'll show you how we do that in pattern. And here we go, y'all. I've got all my rows done for my sleeve. So I put in the increases that I was gonna put in and I completed all the way up to what is meant to be my last row. Now the last row on the sleeve is a closed row, the one where you simple one and then knit the yarn over. So now let's talk about how we bind off. So since it was a closed row, we have all of our stitches right here. So we can actually bind off just like you would on a normal row of Tunisian crochet. So we're going to grab our next stitch here, just like we do for simple stitch, yarn over and just pull through both loops on the hook. And remember just to keep it nice and loose. Don't get too tight here or we'll get puckering at the top of our stitches. Insert into the next stitch, just like for simple stitch, pull through. Insert in the next stitch, yarn over, pull through both. And we're going to do that all the way across the row. So this time, the bind off is super duper simple. And it's going to give us a nice row of braided stitches there at the top of the work to make it super duper easy to seam our sleeve to our work. So I'm just slip stitching each stitch across. Insert, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert, yarn over, pull through both loops. All the way over. Until we get to our very last stitch. One more here. Edge stitch, we're going to insert under both loops of that edge stitch, yarn over and pull through that stitch and the remaining loop on our hook. And now we want to make sure we fasten off, leaving a tail that is twice the width of our panel. So just measuring across the top here, right? Just like that, a little bit more for good measure. And then we can fasten off, lift that big loop up and out of our work. If you did decide to mark your increases, you can remove those markers now. So at this point, we have 2 sleeves, we have 2 front panels, and we have a back panel. This is pretty much the building blocks of our cardigan. We've created all the individual pieces. Now let's move on to assembly and bring it all together. Alrighty, folks, let's bring this all together. So to do assembly, we're gonna need all of our pieces. We're also gonna need a tapestry needle, a pair of scissors, and locking stitch markers definitely help at this time. So if you have some, make sure they're handy. So the first things first, we're going to attach the front panels to the back panel. So here I have my back panel. I'm going to make sure that the front side is facing me. And if you need to double check which side is up, we are looking for the little arrows or the little arrowheads to be facing up. So I'm going to flip mine this way. That is my back. And here are my fronts. Again, arrows facing up. So I've got one front will go on this side, arrows facing up, Other front will go on this side. And at this point, it's really helpful to grab your locking stitch markers and put things in place. Now that we've got everything in place, we have a decision to make. Are we going to whip stitch seam or are we going to mattress stitch seam? It really doesn't matter whichever you go with. I did use mattress stitch seams for my original sample, but it would have worked with whip stitch. I've used both for cardigans, whatever is easiest for you. So I'm going to show you both here as I seam these. I'm going to do mattress stitch here and whip stitch here. Okay, let's start with the mattress stitch. You come a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. Now we're going to use the leftover yarn from when we fastened off. Let's talk about how we're going to mattress stitch seam this together. First off, we're going to be working with just the inside loops of our stitches. So we can see these little V's here. We're just working with the inside loops of the V's. And then on this side, we've got our little V's, just the inside loops. Okay. So first things first, my tail is coming out of the right. So I'm going to go in on the left. I'm going to grab the back loop of the first stitch on the left. And then I'm going to go into that same stitch here on the right, just grabbing again that inside loop. And now for the remainder of the seam, I'm going to go in where I came out of and up out of the next stitch, just like that. So in where I came out of before and up in the next stitch. In that same stitch, out the next one, in that same stitch on this side and out the next one. And what this is going to do is give us a very close seam that is somewhat flexible, but also just kind of kisses the fabric together. Makes it look really nice and clean. All right, and once you've got a few stitches, now you'll want to pull these close. So what I like to do is just kind of hold on to the fabric down here and pull, pull, pull. Pull it until you feel just a little bit of resistance at the back. And there is your seam closed up together. So we're going to continue on going down and up, all the way through the rest of the seam. Just a couple stitches left here. I'm going to tighten that through. One more stitch. So I'm going down and up the back loop of this stitch. Just take this marker out. There we go. Down and up the back loop of this stitch here. All right. And there we go. Nice, pretty, clean seam. It is very firm. It's not super flexible. It flexes this way, you know, to go over your shoulder, but it doesn't pull a lot, which is nice, especially for garments. So now what I like to do to make things nice and secure is to put in a knot. So I'm going to go under both loops of the stitch on this side, both loops of the stitch on this side, and then I'm going to grab this loop here and come through the middle, just to close that right up. And at this point, you can weave this end in the back. And there is your mattress stitch seam. Absolutely lovely. Let's get a closer look. Really, really nice. Now let's head to the other side. So on this side, instead of a mattress stitch seam, I'm going to do a whip stitch seam. And personally, I like to do my whip stitch seams from the inside of the work. Just makes things look a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to grab that tail as well as my tapestry needle. And we're going to start from the back here. So what I'm going to do is begin in the stitch that is marked on the body, going down into both loops of that stitch. And then I'm coming up on the stitch on the other side, also grabbing both loops of that stitch. Alrighty, now that I've got them both, I'm going to drop this marker, And a whip stitch seam is much easier. It's not as clean of a look, but it does look perfectly fine in my opinion, especially for garments. So we're just grabbing both loops of the stitches that are opposite each other and give it a nice little tug. Not too tight, but just so it's secure. Just about at the end here, a couple more stitches. There we go. And as I'm pulling through my last stitch, just going to give that a little tug, and then I'm going to pass my tapestry needle through this loop again to make a knot, and then I can weave this end in on the back. Now, if we look at the front of this seam, you can see that it still sits nice and clean and even, but it does look a bit different than this. But overall, I think both of these seams are really lovely, and you can make your choice on which you would like to use for the remainder of your assembly process. Once we've seamed the front panels to the back, now it's time to put on the sleeves. So we're just gonna rotate this right here. Now I have my sleeve right here, and what I like to do is, based on your size, you're going to measure out how long your sleeve is meant to be on the side of your project here. So I obviously am working with a smaller sample, so I'm gonna eyeball it, but I really do recommend, just to make sure your sleeve fits well, that you measure out how wide this is supposed to be. So like, let's take a look at what size we chose we were gonna do. So for the upper arm circumference, which is what we're working with here, we said that we're gonna do a large size, which is 17 inches. So if we were to measure out 17 inches, that is here, and half of 17 would be 8.5. So your 8.5 mark on your tape measure should hit right at the seam of your sweater. So at this point, I would then go to the back and put a marker on wherever 0 is, and then go to the fronts and put a marker on where 17 is. That way you know you are seaming your sleeve to the exact measurements that it's supposed to be. So my sleeve is about 7 inches, right? So half of that would be 3.5. And if I was to do that same thing here, 3.5 is getting me to about this stitch on this side. So I'm going to drop a marker in there, and 7 gets me to here. Now at this point as well, I'm going to count my rows to make sure I'm doing an equal amount on either side. So if we count up here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches here. So I'm going to move this one down one just to make sure they're even. Okay. Now with that in there, you can see that and this is also unblocked, right? So I've got some flexibility to be able to reach to both sides. So I shouldn't have any issue getting to where my stitches need to go. Now, while I've got this stretched out here, I'm also going to mark kind of what looks like my center stitch and line that up with that center seam. So this is all just to make sure the alignment is right. So when I go to start seaming this together, everything falls where it needs to. Now I'm going to stick with a whip stitch seam because it's just a little bit easier, but you can mattress stitch seam your sleeves if that is the route that you're going. And it is what I did with the original project as well. So just a quick little whip stitch. I'm going in this first stitch and now in this marked stitch as well. Take out the marker because I don't need it. And now I can proceed to whip stitch. Now what you'll notice, whether you whip stitch or mattress stitch seam, is that we're not working stitch for stitch anymore. We're now working row ends into a working row. So what you'll notice here is that we do not have an equal amount of stitches along the side of these rows as we do on the top of this row. So whether you're mattress stitch seaming or whip stitch seaming, you're going to have to make some modifications, right? So for this next stitch here, I'm going to put it into this row end. For the following, I'm going to go into the same stitch just because they're not stitch for stitch. All right. So we're just trying to keep that seam even, but it's not going to be stitch for stitch. So we'll do a few of these together. And I'm essentially just going straight across. So whatever stitch is there straight across for me, that's the one that I'm going to grab. So I'm whip stitching with the right side facing here, just so we're all looking at the same thing. But you can whip stitch with the wrong side facing just to make sure that that seam looks just like this one. So I'm going to go in right across, even though I worked into that stitch already, just to make sure everything stays nice and even here. Alrighty, last stitch here. I'm just going to go under a loop right here to create my knot. And there we go. We have a lovely sleeve seam looking good. She's good to go. And now we can take this end and weave it into the back. Now at this point, I would go ahead and put on my other sleeve. And now you can see we've got kind of that template, right? We've got that general cardigan shape. Now what I would recommend at this point, once you put on this other sleeve, is to either wet or steam block this. Personally, I would wet block it. Take the whole thing, dunk it in some water, let it sit there for about 20 minutes, take it out, press out as much of the water as you can. Don't wring it. We don't want to mess up all these beautiful stitches. Don't do that. But press out as much of the water as you can, and then put this on your blocking boards and stretch these pieces into place. This yarn especially takes incredibly well to wet blocking, and it adds a ton of drape to this piece, which is absolutely needed. So I do recommend wet or steam blocking your piece at this point. Now I'm going to put on this other sleeve, and then I'm going to have you come back and we're going to seam up the sides of our cardigan and start talking about some ribbing. Sleeves are done, and now we can seam the sides of the cardigan. So close all of this up. Since I'm doing whip stitch seaming, I am going to flip back to the wrong side of my cardigan and just kind of start lining things up. How cute! We got a little mini cardigan. It's so cute. All right, so we'll want to grab a long length of yarn. I've got some right here. Just grab a long length. I would say at least 2 to 3 times the length of this seam. So we're going all the way from the cuffs towards the underarm down the side of the body. So there's 1 length, 2, I think I'm going to do 3 just to be safe. It's usually my go-to. It's more than enough for just about any kind of seam. Whip stitch seam, mattress stitch seam, whatever you want to do. So now we're just going to start at the ends here, and we're just working stitch for stitch. Right on the end of the cardigan, we're just going to grab a stitch here, grab a stitch here. Once I pull that through, I like to put a little knot here, leaving a tail long enough to weave in later, just to keep that secure. Make sure that doesn't fall out on us. And from there, I like to kind of do my whip stitch seams flat. Just makes them lay a little bit better, in my opinion, as opposed to doing them kissed like this and then open it up. I like to have the seams just kind of meet each other like this. So let's get going. I am almost to the end here, just a couple more stitches to go. And we're going to do one more here at the very bottom. Make sure we've got a nice clean edge to apply our ribbing. There we go. And now we can weave in that end. And snip. So we've got one side done. Yeah, looks good. Seam looks good on this side as well. I'm really happy with that. And now I'll go ahead and seam the other side. Meet me back here and let's get into some ribbing. Now, I don't know about you, but I am pretty darn smitten with this little mini cardigan. It's just so stinking cute. I can't get over it. Okay, so we have made all our panels. We've seamed them together. We've closed up the sides of our cardigan. Literally all we have left to do is add this ribbing and we are ready to wear. So let's get to it. We're going to switch to our 6mm hook, and you're going to need your yarn, and we're going to be starting at the bottom corner of the left front panel. Now this is the left panel when you have it on, when you're wearing it, right? So like If you are wearing this right now, this is the left panel. So this is where we're starting, and we're going to make our ribbing in this direction, going all the way around the bottom of our cardigan. So first things first, we are going to join with a slip stitch in this bottom corner down here. So I'm going to actually bring it in a little closer. There we go. So if we're starting down here, right, we've got all these little V's that were left over from when we started our cardigan. So I'm going to just grab this very first V, insert my hook. Then I'm going to grab my yarn, leaving a tail long enough to weave in later. And I'm going to yarn over the hook and pull through. That's how we'll join with a slip stitch. Now for your sweater, it says to chain 9. I am making obviously a smaller sample, so I'm just going to chain 5. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we've got our 5 chains here, starting in the second chain from the hook. So this first loop does not count as a stitch. We've got our first chain here, second chain is here. I'm going to single crochet in just the back loop of that chain. There's 2, 3, and 4. You should have 8 stitches for your ribbing. Let me open this up so you can really see what I'm doing. Okay, so I've made it all the way back to my cardigan. Now I'm going to slip stitch in the same stitch where we joined. So right here, pull through for a slip stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch in this next V just next to it right there. What that does is it anchors the ribbing to the cardigan as we make it. So that is our row 1. Now for row 2, we're going to rotate our work to work back down this ribbing. We're going to skip these 2 slip stitches and single crochet in the back loop of these stitches here. So all the way down. So for me, it's just 4. For you, it would be 8. There's 3 and 4. So we just finished this row. Let's do a few more together. So we're going to chain 1 to start, turn our work, and we need to work in the back loops of each of our stitches across to make our ribbing. So I'm going to insert into just the back loop of that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 to complete the single crochet. There's 2 for me, 3, and 4. There we go. And now we're going to find the next 2 stitches here along the bottom of our cardigan. So this stitch is already worked into. I can see that from this little loop here that's coming from my ribbing. So I need these 2 stitches right here, 1 and 2. So I'm going to insert under both loops of that stitch, yarn over, pull through for a slip stitch, and then grab the next one as well and complete a slip stitch. Now I can turn my work, skip those 2 slip stitches, single crochet in the back loop of the next stitch here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for you, you'll have 8 stitches on your ribbing. So I do recommend just counting to make sure you don't lose one. You'd be surprised how easy it is to lose stitches in ribbing. A couple more together. Back loop of this stitch here at the base of the chain. 1, 2, here's 3, and 4. This one got a little tiny on me. There we go. So this stitch is completed. So we're going to slip stitch in these next 2. Here's 1 and 2. Turn our work, skip these 2 slip stitches, single crochet in the next stitch here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can see that our ribbing is being attached to our cardigan with a nice clean join, and we'll be able to complete that all the way around the bottom of our sweater. So I'm going to keep going. I'll meet you over here, and then I'll show you how we'll transition into working the ribbing up the front of our cardigan. Bottom ribbing is done, and I just love how this just adds a nice bit of polish, but the ribbing is not too big compared to the cardigan, so it doesn't take away from all this beautiful texture and color going up here. It just gives it this nice crisp look. Now, we finished our ribbing with the loop coming out of the bottom, which is absolutely perfect because that's got us set up to then be able to add ribbing here to the top of our cardigan. So I'm going to jump right into it. So I just finished here. I'm going to take out this chain that I added. I don't want to confuse you. but I just finished my last row of ribbing right here. So to begin the ribbing, you're gonna wanna chain up the amount that it says in the pattern, which is 7. Again, for mine, since it's just this small sample, I'm gonna chain up 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, working in that second chain from the hook, I'm gonna single crochet in each. So that'll leave me with 4. You'll end up with 6. 2, 3, and 4. And from here, I'm just gonna do a little rotating, just like this, to start working up this side here. So I'm gonna join in the base of this first stitch here, as well as the next stitch next to it. So I'm just working up the last row of my ribbing here. Now I can rotate, skip those first 2 slip stitches, single crochet in the back loop of each stitch on my ribbing. So for me, that'll be 4. And again, for you, that will be 6. Here we go. 3 for me and 4. Once again, chain 1, turn, single crochet in the back loop, down this row of stitches. And then slip stitch in the next 2 stitches on the cardigan. There's 1. And come on, loops. There she go for 2. So I'm going to get off this ribbing here in a second, and we'll start working on the actual body of our cardigan. Chain 1, turn, single crochet in the back loop until we make it back to the cardigan. There's 3 and 4. I don't know why you hiding from me. And now you can see I'm kind of at this like interesting bumpy spot here. I'm just going to kind of make a stitch right here. And then I'm going to grab the 2 loops of this stitch here. And then again, single crochet in the back loop. 3 and 4. So by now I think you've got the gist of it. So we're going to continue. Look, it's so cute already. We're going to continue adding that ribbing all the way up. You do not have to do anything special when you get to this transition of the neckline. Just continue all the way up this opening, across the back neck, and then down this opening. Join me when you get to the end here, and let's talk about our final finishing steps. Okie dokie makers. So I just finished my last stitch on my ribbing. Let's fasten off. Oh, that feels so good after doing all this ribbing. So if we open this up and look at the front, we can see that our ribbing is all done, and it really does. Oh my gosh, I gotta make me one of these ASAP. It's just so stinking cute. And what I really love about this cardigan is that it's so simple, it's so straightforward, great way to practice Tunisian crochet as well as all of your finishing steps. Throw in a little bit of ribbing, really customize this to make it your own. You could even add pockets on here if you made this a little bit longer. It would be so very cute. And I really hope you enjoyed making this with me as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And if you did, make sure you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel. And I will see y'all in the next tutorial. Thanks so much for hanging with me. Bye y'all.